There are several reasons why I believe the changes made to stamp duty by George Osborne in 2014 and then in 2016 have been catastrophic for the property market. Although I welcome the increase of the threshold to £250,000 recently, the effects of George Osborne's changes continue to have a serious impact on the property market. Firstly, in 2014, he made changes to stamp duty by increasing the rate at the very top for properties over 1.5 million to a whopping 12%. Now, that's all well and good, you may say. If people can afford to buy property in that price range, why shouldn't they pay 12%? But as many of you will know, in some parts of London, that can be 1.5 million can buy little more than a terraced family home. In other parts of the country, yes, it could buy a luxury property. But the effect has been that people slightly lower down the price range have been hesitant and gradually decreasing in numbers who are moving upwards because of the colossal stamp duty fee. That then, because it has created a bottleneck at that level, that has filtered downwards, making less and less properties available further down the line, as those who would want to move up the chain cannot find properties because less and less are available. And this has a detrimental effect on the whole market. He then went on to introduce a stamp duty surcharge of 3% in 2016 on all properties bought where the buyer will not use the property as their primary home. Once again, that did initially get a lot of support, but there have been some serious adverse effects or consequences as a result of this. Throughout the UK, there are over 600,000 properties that are below par or derelict or definitely unsuitable or illegal for renting. Previously, these properties would have been bought by small developers or independent builders who would then renovate them and then sell them on, and they could be made available for families to buy or rent. But in this example, for example, now, since the changes, if a developer or a builder were to buy that property, he or she would have to pay an additional 3% stamp duty surcharge on top of the prevailing rate, if that applies. The developer would then add that to the price. The buyer or investor who would then buy the renovated property would then have to pay an additional 3% on top of the inflated price. This has squeezed the margins, and for many investors and developers, this has made the renovation of entry-level property less and less viable, meaning that these developers have been squeezed out of the market and less of these properties are being renovated, and now they're just being left there to fall apart. Beyond that, a year or two later, George Osborne introduced a 2% levy on overseas investors. Once again, that's good. Yes, it was necessary. There are over 250,000 properties in the UK owned by overseas investors, but a staggering 85,000 properties owned by overseas investors in London alone. Many of these properties are used as little more than financial car parks for these overseas investors to park their ill-gotten gains. Those of you who live in London may know the Bishop's Avenue, for example. It was once a very luxurious street with some of the most beautiful properties in London, but through the 80s and 90s, it was all bought up, just about all of it, by overseas investors who have no interest in the property, no vested interest in the area as a whole, no intention to live there, and these properties have just been left there to rot. I believe that is unethical. The government would argue that this money coming in by foreign investors is investment. It's bringing wealth to the country. I would say that's not definitely the case, because there are adverse effects on the community where that money is invested, because more and more properties are just sitting there empty because they have been used by overseas investors to park their money. The government makes such a big deal about the anti-money laundering laws, and they can be draconian, but for the main part, they are enforced on the average person. And when I say the average person, I mean average to fairly wealthy, not the super rich, apart from token gestures, as we've had over the last year, where they decided to confiscate the property of a few Russians as a gesture of support to the Ukraine. For the main part, the government encourages these overseas investors to park their filthy money in London. In 2008, they used this money to actually kickstart the development and sale of many of these overpriced pyramid schemes in London, as many of you may be aware. I actually believe that the levy for the stamp duty surcharge should be pushed more onto overseas investors to gradually discourage them from investing in the UK. I believe that there needs to be more incentive for small developers and independent builders to renovate homes. There should be tax incentives for anybody who improves a property, because that is the only way that our housing stock will not only be improved year upon year, but year upon year we will see an increase in property available to the average person. 600,000 properties sat there doing nothing is a lot, and these properties need to be improved. Over 60% of buy-to-let properties are below par and are not up to the standard, EPC standard, that is planned to be introduced in 2025. And yet the government offers no incentive to improve them. And if these properties don't improve, if these properties are not available to be on the market for families to buy or rent, that only serves to increase the difficulty in people buying or renting a home. It only serves to increase the cost to people in energy to heat their homes, and it continues to allow our property to be used unless major changes are made for overseas investors to simply park their money in the UK. I would argue that an overseas investor parking millions of pounds in a property in London is not an investment in the way that Toyota investing millions into building a car plant in the Northwest and create jobs. That is investment. That creates jobs. That creates wealth, whereas parking money does not. There may be a few people who make money from them here or there, but overall, collectively, I believe that they are having an adverse effect on the whole of society. I appreciate that the very few who are fortunate to actually own properties in these areas and have seen the prices pushed up, because there are people who wish to who have the money and wish to invest it there. And you can't blame people for being happy to see their property being pushed up in value. But in reality, it is fool's gold, because for the majority of people who are not beneficiaries of those who have money, then the increase in value of property doesn't create wealth. This generation's wealth is the next generation's debt. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you have to say on the matter. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.